Hi, thank you for joining us at Human Capital Gains. Today, I am joined by Tom Hood. Tom is one of the most influential leaders in the accounting profession. As Executive Vice President of Business Engagement and Growth for the AICPA, Tom focuses on engaging with finance and accounting leaders to foster innovation, transformation, and growth. Prior to joining the AICPA, he served as CEO of the Maryland Association of CPAs and the Business Learning Institute, where he championed the future readiness of the profession. With a passion for anticipating change and helping others prepare for what's next, Tom is known for his thought leadership around technology, leadership development, and the future of finance. Tom, thanks for joining us today.
Gary, it's great to be here. Love catching up here.
Yeah, it's going to be a fantastic conversation. So let's get right into it. So finance is adopting AI faster than ever, yet fewer than 1 in 5 teams are actually proving a real payoff. Why do you think that is?
We're talking to a whole bunch of them, and you're right, it is mixed. I think the biggest piece is mindset, the mindset of the people, and we can talk more about it, but effectively, when finance introduces AI, there's plenty of finance people who are worried about, is this going to replace my job? So without giving them the context and the mindset about what you're trying to do ahead of time, they're going to slow walk any of the change. That's probably the biggest barrier to adoption.
Yeah, we're seeing that in more than just finance teams too. Just
Sure.
really kind of like that mindset shift and readiness and a willingness to really try to implement AI in daily tasks, right? Really optimizing workflow. For those teams that are hesitant, are there any kind of like early stage wins that you found that help kind of move skeptics along?
Yeah, actually, we've pretty much perfected a way to help a finance team shift their people. We call it a presentation called Riding the Waves of Transformation. It's based on a quote that I love by this philosopher, John Kabat-Zinn, who says, "You can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf." So effectively, we set up this story with giving them the trends. We use our future of finance research. So what happens is most finance teams don't get out much. So they don't have a outside in perspective of the world. So when their internal leader says, we're going to do this transformation, we're going to start using AI, you name it, they're all going, oh my God, they're coming after my job. So when we give them that outside in perspective and we poll them, we can actually watch the sentiment of the group and see it shift by the time we're done. And then we do some sentiment analysis with AI to say, how ready is this group for transformation? And so far I bet you we've probably done about 50 of those presentations. And out of those 50, I would say more than 40 have seen a noticeable shift in their team's attitude and buy-in to their transformation journeys. And then it accelerated their journey subsequent to that. But it's a little more than that. And we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah, it's really kind of like mindset shifts in action, right?
Yes. And really it comes from, I call it the best research we ever did that nobody read. It was a white paper we did with KPMG right before the pandemic started. So we released it like right then. Pandemic kicked in, nobody read the white paper. So I happened to read it and I thought there's some really big nuggets there. But here's what it says. Effectively, transformation and success, 80% is people, 20% is tools. Of the 80%, something like 36% is mindset, followed by skill set. And the skills are success skills or soft skills as they're known. And so what happens is if you start leading with getting people in a growth mindset, number one, so they go, okay, this is about growing, not staying the same. And then the second part is begin to upskill them with the types of skills they need to deploy AI properly. Then they have confidence that you're actually trying to upskill them in the whole finance team. And thus they're going to buy in. And then that moves the whole thing faster. And you're covering roughly 60% of the transformation success with just those two areas.
Yeah, I love that kind of like paradigm model, that mindset, skill set, tool set, because so many companies do it opposite, right? They find the tool, right? They want to implement the tool to say they're implementing AI, right? And then they scramble to try and get everybody on board to prove the ROI, right, of their investment, right? And
Yep.
it's really about preparing the workforce to be able to use the tool properly, right? It's like, I'm not going to send somebody on a construction site, just hand them a hammer and say, go to work, right?
Very true. And I've been guilty of that. I mean, that's how I've done a couple transformations and it didn't work right. I had to go reset the whole daggone project because of that.
Right.
Not mindset was missing.
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of work where we're coming in kind of like after these major shifts and major implementations, right? Because they're not working, right? Because people didn't think on how to bring their employees along, right? The human capital management of that transformation. I think it kind of speaks to, you and I have talked about it before, kind of like the evolving role of the CFO and like that expanding mandate. And so much of these technology transformations are kind of, falling under the remit of CFO because they're looking for an ROI on that investment too. So how are CFOs then finding a need to adopt to that mindset, skill set, and tool shift paradigm, right? Where, before it was just about balancing the book and finding returns.
Yeah, it's funny. We just got back from the Gartner CFO conference, 3,000 CFOs. I got to speak there on a panel. And Gary, it was tangible, right? You could actually see the topics of transformation and where all the CFOs were going. Interesting enough, the controllers are right behind them. So the CFOs have had to upskill and reskill and think differently about their role. They're now like a co-pilot of the business next to the CEO, the good ones. And that requires a whole different enterprise view and really understanding strategy, understanding trends, right? And then obviously staying on top of digital transformation. And then what that's doing is pulling the CFO's core team, controller, FP&A, those folks are now having to upskill in proportionate to keep up with the CFO's changing role. So you could see all of that happening at that Gartner conference. And that's exactly what our future finance research has said now for a couple of years. And we're obviously noticing that movement. In fact, the number one way to get to the CEO office now is the CFO, which hasn't been true for quite a while. It used to always come out of marketing or product side and never necessarily from the CFO. We have a whole bunch of our future finance folks who've actually been promoted to COO and or CEO.
Do you think that that's directly related to the expanded remit of that role?
Absolutely. I mean, they're taking on a bigger seat at the strategy table and they're guiding the whole transformation of the business, which relies on the right accounting information so that they can do predictive analytics on what's around the corner, right? That's where they're finding they have to stretch. And so they have to bring their teams along on that journey.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you find that anything will, I guess, fall out of their remit because of this, or do you think it's just going to continue to expand?
I think many of them would like things to fall out of their remit. I think for the most part, it's still early days, I would say, Gary. I mean, I think it's relatively recent that we're seeing this bigger shift. It started coming out of COVID, right? Coming out of that pandemic. And then you had all the inflation and all that stuff. Now you've got geopolitics, tariffs, you name it. So the focus of forward looking has been the driver of this new remit. And as they get the ones who do really well at it, and then obviously that includes deploying AI now. If they're doing really well at it, then the CEO basically says, you need to sit up here in the pilot seat next to me and be my co-pilot. And that's when you start to see that remit really expand. So I would say that's where they are. So what's coming off of it, that's why they're moving the controller up, because they're trying to get the controller who's kind of the guard, if you will, right? The control point. But even the controller now has to start taking on more of the analytics piece to free up time for that CFO to keep moving in the more strategy and advisory. And these transformations often are company wide, and that takes a lot of resource too. So they're actually getting IT tucked under them. So not only is the remit happening at the high level, it's what's getting tucked under it. And that's where they're going to have to, something is going to have to give at some point here for sure.
Yeah. It's funny. I asked the question, what's coming off of their plate? And we just kept mentioning stuff that's being added.
Exactly.
So, you're talking about the expansion of the controller role too. So it's really kind of like the entire finance function that needs to be upskilled at this point. And, you and I have worked on models ad nauseum to talk about just the upskilling of the finance team alone. But I think, and I wanted to touch upon kind of like the T-shaped model, your T-shaped model, because I don't think it's just for the finance function that it works. I think as the entire organization is going through these dramatic transformations, everybody has their special knowledge and their expertise, right? So talk a little about how that T kind of like rounds out everybody to be able to work cross-functional.
Yeah, and in fact, we're in the midst of updating that model because we've noticed there's some new skills on the horizon right now that are going to need to be added to the T. But effectively, the picture is, and this fits the whole expanding role of finance, right? The typical finance function from CFO, controller, you name it, all the way down, is about deep technical skills, obviously based on accounting and knowledge of the data inside the business, what's in the ERP or the financial systems. That's been expanded to include CRM, sales systems. All those pieces are now coming under that CFO remit. But what happened is, as they started to be pushed into the need to forecast, and again, this is where COVID propelled them into that fast, because suddenly the business was shut down and the CEO's going, okay, what's going to happen next month? And the CFO's like, I don't know what's going to happen next week, much less next month or the next 5 years. So that pushed them into forecasting in a big way, or FP&A as it's known. Mm-hmm. What happens when you get into that, now you need what we call boundary crossing skills, right? Skills that we call it. So basically you take that big vertical of the deep technical accounting and data knowledge and add boundary crossing bar on the top, which includes the money skills that you need to work across an organization, or like a CEO. So strategic and critical thinking, always number one every time we pull it. Communication and storytelling, emphasis on storytelling, because you have to tell the story of the numbers to non-financial people. Collaboration, because you have to learn how to play well with others when you're working across all the different functions of a company. Then you can add in business acumen. They have to really understand the business model and where it's going. That's another critical one in there. And then you can add in things like agility, some more of those pieces. But that kind of complements, so that gets tacked on top of the deep technical, and that allows them to act as that co-pilot, if you will, with the CEO.
I love the use of the term co-pilot there too, because I feel like it really is, in a lot of the companies that I'm working with, it really is that co-pilot role. And, it's a fantastic term to use in the AI age as well, right? Because we're all familiar with it. But the concept of co-piloting, right? Because that's how I propose, like, I think the marketing that Microsoft used there is genius, because, we're not seeing a lot of AI replace individuals, right? We are seeing it as an expansion of our capabilities, right? So that co-pilot concept, I think applying it to AI, but also applying it to the role of the CFO, really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and we have probably 50 or 60 Fortune 100 finance executives on our future finance group, and not one has said we're looking to reduce headcount. Now, what they will say is we're looking to reduce future headcount. So we want to make our team super productive and deploying AI to do all the new things we need it to do. But we're not trying to do that to reduce the current headcount. That's why we're going to continue to upskill and reskill. To your point, that's what makes people confident if the leader's putting that in before you start pushing the transformation.
Right.
They go, okay, you're trying to upskill me. That means I have a shot here, right? So then you're going to work it a lot differently. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great model shift. I really do like that. And I think it kind of moves us into, another topic that you and I have talked about a lot, where, we have the T-shaped professional, and it was really focused on kind of like leadership development. But now we're seeing, in this age of kind of like rapid technical and digital transformation, that transition into employee-led change, right? And empowering the entire organization to function as leaders. And we're seeing it when we talk about agentic AI too, right? Like, as a leader, I'm not going to create a tool for you to make your daily life easier, right? Because I don't really understand your daily role or your daily tasks, right? So as we see AI being adopted in a lot of these companies, we see the empowerment of these employees to figure out a way to make their own daily tasks easier and more impactful to them.
Yeah.
So where are you seeing kind of like employee-led leadership ideals kind of like take hold within these organizations?
So almost all of them that are working on either AI or finance transformation, right? They've got teams, and those teams are empowered to create the vision of what they're doing, begin to sell that, and then begin to work it. So they're all using very collaborative, agile techniques to kind of manage their teams. I know of one that did a Shark Tank piece to try to get ideas for AI usage. That was a really cool thing to do. And they bubbled up something like 300 ideas, so many that they had to increase their budget for what they were doing in AI. And then deploying them have already like met their return on what they were trying to do because of all that ground up momentum. So we know that model works, but your people have to have the skills to basically do good collaboration and understand how to lead employee-led type initiatives, right? That's a big one that we start to see.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to exactly what you said, mindset and skill set first,
Correct.
right? Before
Yep.
we try to implement tool set.
But yeah, we're seeing a decent number of those pieces where they're actually deploying those techniques inside their teams to kind of move things along faster.
Yeah, and starting from the ground up like that too, it allows you to pressure test these ideas in a more constructive way, right? Rather than a list coming from the top down and then everybody that's supposed to implement it saying, well, that's never going to work,
Right. Exactly.
right?
So that, I mean, you're spot on. And that's where having people propose these ideas and then piloting things, that's another piece, right? Instead of the big bang, let's go transform everything, put in this gigantic system, they're doing little pressure tests and pilots to then see where things are going. And then that's when they build that out in a bigger way and then deploy it more broadly.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because when you really get down to the pain points of a lot of these teams, even those that are hesitant to use AI, everybody has daily tasks that they don't like doing, right? So if you can really start to eliminate them from those tasks from their daily day, like then all of a sudden you see some adoption come in.
One of our CFOs puts it this way. She goes, Tom, this was the one who actually did the Shark Tank. She goes, what we figured out is once they knew that we could now start to eliminate the soul crushing work that they have to do every day, suddenly they're like, oh, I can get rid of that stuff, then I'm all in.
Yeah.
So that's a great place to start, right? Or what are the things you hate to do?
Right.
Can that be automated? And suddenly people are like, wait a minute, is that what you're talking about? Oh, yeah. Then it makes room to do the cool stuff that's going to really help the organization.
Exactly. And really focus on creative tasks, because you and I were both early adopters of AI, and we know like on the truly creative outlets, it's not quite there yet, right? Like we have a lot of AI built into a lot of the tools and a lot of our software that we have as well. But, every time I speak on this, I say AI is really not at a point where you can completely eliminate the human from the loop at this point, right? We're just not there. So, and I think that that's something to keep in mind, that there still needs to be human oversight on a lot of this.
Yeah, I totally agree.
When we really talk about, so we're talking about upskilling and we're talking about mindset shifts, what are those essential skills that you find lead directly to business impact? Because as I'm talking to more and more leaders, we're moving away from an idea of kind of professional development for professional development's sake. And we're really moving to, what do my people need to know and what do they need to be able to do to have a direct impact on our business? So as we talk about mindset and skill sets, where are you seeing the most impact directly related to business in a lot of these?
So for us in the corporate finance arena, which is where we spend most of my time, so to speak, it's going to be in two things. It's going to be in our professional credential, the CGMA, Chartered Global Management Accountant, but because it is focusing on scenarios. So unlike traditional continuing ed, where it's, do the multi-choice and pass and, you're ready to go, This is proposing real life scenarios that they can relate to on their jobs. And the scenarios are everything from looking at business models, digital examples. So they're applying really good strategic thinking along with good basic continuing ed, if you will, or qualifying stuff to get them to that idea of a chartered global management, like understanding the whole business, understanding all the different pieces from, different levels of the organization, management, strategic, et cetera. That's been one way. The other way is literally taking the T-shaped professional. We often poll them in terms of what skills are they really looking for. And again, this is where strategic and critical thinking always number one, no matter who we poll. And so then it's about giving them models and ways of thinking about that. And often those are collaborative. At some point, there's roundtable discussions going on, et cetera. So I think those are the most critical ones we're seeing. Then obviously storytelling is the other one that we see quite often for finance. And then they lead to impact, right? Because if you can collaborate across the boundaries of your organization in the different divisions, helping them interpret their numbers proactively for the future, suddenly you're having an impact on the org. And that's where it gets kind of exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, more and more organizations, they're becoming more flat, right? We all have to work collaboratively. We all have to work across the aisle and, have a basic understanding of the business across all functions, right?
Yeah.
And understand kind of the impact that we can personally have, but also the impact that our roles produce for the business as well. All right. Couple questions to end us off here. What's one practice that Fortune 1000 finance chiefs should steal from startups?
I think it gets to the two parts, right? Agility, the rapid pace with collaboration, and at the middle, even lower level, so that people are empowered to do things. So bottom up, collaboration, and obviously agile so you can move fast.
Essential skill that today's accountant has to master that didn't exist 5 years ago. And I think I know what the answer is going to be, but go ahead.
Well, so it's actually influence based on storytelling and projection. So they got to know how to do the forecast, which in itself is a relatively new skill for many accountants. So they got to understand how to do that. And then they have to understand how to take that and translate it to other people that are non-financial people.
Do you find that accountants that kind of like survived COVID are a little better positioned to handle the forecasting now because it was a skill that everybody had to learn?
Yeah, they were thrust into that, right? And then it was followed up by inflation right after COVID.
Right.
And then they had more forecasting to do. And that evolved both the tool sets in addition to their skill set. So they've got to understand the tools and the new tools. Now they're going to get tools that are empowered with AI that gives them even more capability there. But yes, there's no question COVID accelerated all those trends.
Yeah. All right. And the last question. Complete this sentence for me. The future of finance is?
Future of finance is being a business partner to the business. And of course, we would add a CGM.
Well, I think with you at the helm, Tom, the future of finance is also bright.
It is extremely bright. I mean, our people are they're downright excited by it. Now, the other thing we've noticed, though, is it's lonely because they don't always have other executives inside the business that they can relate to. So our group, our community is creating the tribe where they can say, well, what the heck are you doing at Yelp or Black & Decker? And suddenly there's this community of here's what we're doing, and they can learn from each other. So having that helps a lot in this environment.
Yeah, I would absolutely. Yeah, you have to, right? Yeah. You have to have sounding boards and success stories to share, right? To help people navigate these waters.
Yeah.
Tom, I really appreciate you joining me today.
Well, I love being on here. This is stuff I care about, so it's easy to talk.
Yeah. And we'll bring you on for another episode soon.
Awesome. All right, Gary. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Tom.